Let me just make some other comments as we wrap this matter. I want to reiterate what this matter is and is not. As I said in my opening statement, this is a consideration of whether this matter could proceed without the requirements of the municipal land use law. I've commented on this many times before, and my colleagues have earlier today, that we take our positions seriously as regulators, and often we must consider and balance often inconsistent requests or positions of parties and to do what is in the best interest of the people of New Jersey on the whole, based on the facts before us. In this matter, we have a lengthy record about the need for the project, the benefits, as well as the concerns about the project and its impacts. I've also highlighted that the BPU is a quasi-judicial agency, and therefore we are duty-bound to consider the record and evidence in front of us, though we cannot divorce ourselves from public comment or opinions, which is obvious from even today's meeting, or the letters, the emails, or the phone calls we've received in the last couple days. But when we make decisions, we must do so based on the record of evidence that is before us, not other matters. The applicant has presented this application primarily based on the need for resiliency and reliability to its service territory and its customers. The applicant has made this proposal largely on the foundation that this need is for redundancy, and the risk not to do so would be detrimental, particularly as highlighted by the impacts of Superstorm Sandy. I've reviewed the record, as my colleagues have, I know, and New Jersey Natural argues that the essential considerations is for resiliency. The company serves over 500,000 people, and this would support a redundant service to at least 400,000 citizens of the state and the critical infrastructure that is part of the Joint Base McGuire-Dix-Lakehurst. The project is consistent with the Energy Master Plan of 2011 and 2015. And it supports the energy infrastructure, specifically natural gas pipelines, to supply natural gas for consumers, businesses and industry, and critical infrastructure to deliver low-cost fuels for resiliency. There's a substantial record that there were various alternative routes which were considered and proposed. The DEP and other agencies, specifically the SADC, validated these alternatives. And now there were at least 6 various pipeline proposals, alignment proposals, and which others were considered by staff. The pipeline does go through 6 municipalities, 2 of which have objected. And I, like my colleagues, don't take lightly that when municipalities object to a pipeline, as they have done so here, but it is our responsibility to evaluate the application and balance the objections with the request. In considering whether to permit the project to proceed without local approvals, and in the face of opposition by these 2 municipalities, we need to consider that broader set of interests in the state of New Jersey. The applicant does suggest that the benefits of resiliency to about 500,000 customers and continued supply of energy to the Joint Base is critical and is appropriate for us to use as a basis to approve. The company did consider 5 alternatives for alignments, and at the request of and in conjunction with deliberations with our staff, evaluated other alternatives and modifications, including some that would have avoided the 2 municipalities which objected. So in all, there were 9 separate alternatives considered. The BPU staff previously rendered opinions on the alignment, including the route through the 2 objecting municipalities, and that they were appropriate alternatives to consider. The DEP and the SADC have rendered opinions that this project and proposed alternative is the least impactful regarding all environmental issues. Now, regarding the general consideration about impact on the Pinelands, I note that the pipeline will traverse about 1/3 of the total length of its route in the Pinelands. But the Pinelands Commission, which is the agency vested with the primary responsibility to consider and evaluate development in the Pinelands, has considered this matter and found it in conformity with the Pinelands CMP, as evidenced by its communication in December and then again in March of 2016. It is appropriate, in my opinion, and consistent with the precedent of this board that we rely upon the Pinelands Commission in their professional evaluation and judgment, and that the applicant's proposed development is in conformity with the CMP. While we're certainly mindful of the concerns of citizens, as I have said, and as my colleagues have said, and organized groups advocating for the preservation of the Pinelands, I do not find it persuasive that the arguments that we must consider only be those which are specific impacts on the Pinelands region. Rather, the law is such that we in our deliberations need to consider that broader impact to the public good to determine if the proposed infrastructure is, as I said at the outset, reasonably necessary for the service, convenience, and welfare of the public. So taking all these matters into consideration, I, like my colleagues, also vote in the affirmative to support the application.